Hello everybody and welcome to Organian's Puzzle Box. Now for the people that have bought the CloudForge Complete or the Volume 1, 2 or 3, I wanted to make a video, another one actually, it's a part of the tutorial series, on how to use it, how to use the blueprints found within this package so that you can get the most out of it and you can create scenes like the one you can see behind me with ease. So this particular tutorial is quite, I think, straight to the point, quite short, straight to the point. It effectively explains to you how to use the single cloud blueprint and also how to use the cloud spawner. I'm trying to be as oversimplistic as possible because I don't want to bog you down with too much information. You are going to have to experiment with this until you get the result that you're looking for. These clouds are, as for all intended purposes, they look quite realistic, and they can also be stylized and they can be changed. The material shader can be changed. This tutorial is just about how to use them and how to get the most out of them. For me, the most important thing is that you understand what is the functionality of the blueprints and how you can use them so you can get results like these. You can build, very beautiful scenes and you can art direct them in however way you want. There's a lot to cover with these clouds if you think about it, but that's why there are multiple videos on my channel for you to be able to learn all these techniques and learn how to use them and what every point does. I've made sure that the blueprints are not very overly cluttered with information or options unless you really want them to, so you could dig deeper into those systems and further enhance and develop them. I think overall it's a product that's probably worth your time if you want to achieve results quite quickly and build some very, very interesting and epic scenes. Alright, and here we are in our beautiful scene in Unreal Engine. This is an Icelandic sort of landscape that I got from the Unreal Engine marketplace. I thoroughly recommend it if you guys would like to have such a nice sort of environment, landscape land masses for Iceland. They're really, really cool. So you can see as we move around the sun position, we're able to see more of this particular landscape, which is really cool. They're very they're very detailed from far away, but they obviously kind of lose their detail when you get up close, so be careful with that. But this particular scene is what I've used in one of the render demos that I've done for the CloudForge. So what I really wanted to do is just showcase to you how you can set up your cloud very easily so that you really get a firm understanding of what you're sort of getting and how you can use it. So what we're going to do is we're going to open a new scene. So maybe go for Iceland example number 2 here. And then what we're going to do is effectively start editing that, add some clouds in it. So as you can see, this particular scene has some fog in here, which are added by the actual, creators of this landscape. And we don't necessarily, want any of those because we are going to add our own. So with that, I'm just gonna look for fog cards. I believe, yeah, these are the ones, so we can delete those. Okay, and now we want to create some clouds. Okay, now let's just assume you're opening a new level and it doesn't have a light, doesn't have anything in the scene, but that's fine. So for example, we could delete the light, delete the sky atmosphere, skylight, probably something like that. This is probably the bare bones. So let's just say this is an empty scene without the landscape and stuff. It doesn't matter. I mean, that's just sort of a, something for us to work with. But let's just say we don't have any of that, right? So everything is now pretty much gone from the scenes and the lighting. So very easily for you to set up very quickly a lighting setup. You go up here in Window, select the Environment Light Mixer. And then in this new panel that opens, you can click a few buttons, like for example, create skylight, create atmospheric light, create sky atmosphere, create height fog. So with those few actions, we have now added a fully working environment light. So this is now, as I said, complete. You are able to use anything. By the way, there's also these volumetric clouds. I'm going to just delete those as we don't need any of them. Okay, so with that done, we're pretty much ready. Now you can see there's some shadows issues here, and generally these are happening because of things like lumen and the nanite meshes. But that's that's a totally different topic. We're not really looking into shadows here, as they have nothing to do with what what I'm trying to showcase to you, which is these clouds. I'm just going to reposition the sort of the light to be a bit more, something like that, so we can see a bit of what's happening there. Right, with this done, let's have a look. Over here in the content folder, once you bring in the project, you're going to see the CloudForge Complete VDB pack. So if you double click this, you're going to have 3 different folders, which are effectively, each of these contains all the VDB collections. So all of the texture, the sparse volume textures that you'll use. But we're focusing on, volume 1 for now. Once you enter it, you'll have a blueprint folder, a CloudForge spawner functionality folder, an example map, some rendering settings, the VDB collection itself, and the materials. Now, all you really need to worry yourself with is the blueprint. So when you go in here, you have a multi-cloud spawner, which is effectively just a same version as a single cloud spawner, but you can spawn 2 clouds instead of 1, or more clouds if you want to that way. But I would normally just use a single cloud. Then you also have the this is a single cloud depth fade. You will not have this in your particular folder. This is something that I'm toying with at the minute, so ignore that. And then you're gonna have a BP volumetric VDB, which means this one is like the normal clouds from Unreal Engine. This will allow you to drop those in the scene if you'd like to. But we're going to look at the single cloud for now. There's also in here the CloudForge spawner. There's another blueprint which is called spawner, which allows you to spawn clouds in a certain area and allow them to move around and die out. We're going to test that one as well. But let's first have a look at the single spawn. So when you drag the blueprint in the scene, let's say it's over here, right? You will notice you are able to, sorry, let me just get this close to it. You'll notice you'll be able to see it by this sort of circle that's sort of, rotating in here. That's the showcase where the center of the cloud is. Now, with the blueprint selected, you've got a few options in here. The first one is to add a VDB texture. So we're going to go back in here into the VDB collection. We're going to go to Cyrus, for example. Select this first one and just drop it in there. And now the VDB is loaded, but it's not visible. So for you to be able to see this, you can click the indirect lighting button and the infinite trace button. Now, when you do this, then your cloud will be visible. The infinite trace is a way for you to tell Unreal Engine that you want the VDB to be visible from a very high, a very large distance. Now, this is a bit of an advanced thing, but let's say you want your cloud to be visible from further distances than what this option allows you. You can always click the Edit VDB Cloud here for the blueprint, and then in the blueprint itself, let me just make that big. You'll have in the construction script, you'll have this here where it says R heterogeneous volume max trace distance. Put this number to a very large number like I've got here, and also do it in the event graph. Try the same number effectively. And when you do that, this allows for the blueprint tick box to give you further distances. Now, whenever you edit the blueprint, you might get an issue where the cloud is no longer visible. You just have to do this for one of the blueprints and it will reset. And this is something technical that's happening from the Unreal Engine side of things that needs to be patched out. There's nothing that I can do from my end. Right, so we've got the cloud in here, but it's very small. So we're going to look at increasing that scale maybe to like 500. But and now you can see it's, a lot larger in the scene, probably as large as these mountains, and that's great. I'm just going to, drop it in here somewhere, maybe something like that, create a bit of a barrier here of clouds. That's, rather nice. Okay, with that done, we can now start playing with some of the settings. And as you can see, it's got a density of 1, but we can play around and increasing that density or decreasing it as needed. If you deactivate indirect lighting, the cloud takes a bit of an uglier shape. This is what you want to do, with this one. Now, some of the settings are found in here, and some of the settings are found in the lighting system. So if we select the directional light, for example, we can have a look in here at the indirect lighting intensity. If you increase that, nothing really changes, but well, this is not going to help you for the clouds, especially necessarily. But if you start playing with the volumetric scattering intensity, you can see we can bring in far more intensity in the volumetric cloud itself. The next thing you want to do is have a look at the skylight in here. Make sure the skylight is real-time capture, movable as well. And again, in here, you can play with the direct lighting and the volumetric scattering intensity, but these will not do anything if the light that's affecting the cloud is going to be the directional light, which it is in this particular moment. Now, the other thing that you can also do is have a look at the height fog. The height fog does actually affect the look and feel of these clouds. So let's say, for example, we're going to decrease that fallout, so the fog sort of goes up. And then we can have a look at doing, increasing the intensity. Maybe we can have a look at making it in a volumetric fog instead of just being a normal fog. And then we can have a look at, playing around with the extinction and so on. I mean, this is really dependent from scene to scene. Now, ever since we've already made the changes on the height fog, the cloud started to capture some of that. But the cloud itself, I mean, this one in particular, if we select it again, it's not meant to be very dense, but that can be fixed through either the density slider by adding more density, or you can play with these remap input values again to play around with the density, mask the cloud, or increase its ability. You can also, so all these are, you can also create this into like a fog layer. So right here we have a sort of a fog layer just generated if you want to do that. Now we also have a self shadow, so the more you increase that, the more the cloud gets shadow, sort of shadowing at the bottom here. And we can also desaturate it. So what this means is, as long as this color is not white and it's something else, maybe like a blue, and then you start desaturating, you can see you can add the, sort of a blue tint. And you can also play from up here and maybe make it, I don't know, into like a red or something like that. And then again, with the desaturation slider, you can sort of play around with these settings and get various different shades. So let's just reset that to the normal cloud material. And now let's try some other cloud types. So maybe this Cirrus particularly, so we can add that one. And you can see this one has got a bit of a different kind of look and feel to it. If you change the light direction, by the way, this will change the look and feel of these clouds quite dramatically. Like depending on where the light is, the cloud will be affected. So, for example, here we could darken the cloud from the bottom so that because our light is a bit more overhead, but then also look at decreasing that intensity because it was a bit too dense for that kind of look. There's also clouds that are far more thicker. So, for example, they come on a Nimbus clouds. So if we use one of these, as you can see, this looks a lot more different and a lot more dense, as I said. So even under 0.7, you can just play around with the setting. But this is quite good to build vast scenes. Like for example, this could be like a storm cloud, part of a storm cloud right here. By the way, all of these clouds are reactive to local lights as well. So if you drop a local light in there, you will see a difference. And I can actually showcase this. So let's just say we go over here, we select the light and add a point light, and the point light is, as you can see over there, I can just drag it within the cloud. Obviously, this is a very large cloud, so we've got to play around with the intensity. So I don't know, I'm just gonna really push this up and then increase that attenuation radius. And you can see that it's right now affecting that. So let's just bring it out, maybe somewhere around here. Maybe go for like 50,000 on the attenuation and then do this as a, something like that, maybe even more. So now, as you can see, the light is affecting this cloud, and you could create various different effects by doing this. So imagine lighting strikes and all sorts of things could be done this way with this particular effect. Just make sure that the light source itself is within the bounds of the cloud itself, right? So it's hitting that. Now, if we go back and select the cloud again and increase its density, you'll see the more density it is, the more it sort of swallows that light. So you need more to be able to shine through, okay? And yeah, so that's kind of part of that, so to speak. Right, now, if we want to look at the other sort of settings on this, you can play around with the quality settings. So if we go over here and say show FPS, this is our current FPS with this cloud in the scene, and then I can click the cloud load view in here, and I can have a look down over here, and I can put the shadow, the shadow light downsample factor to 1, and you can see already I'm taking a hit in performance. Put the shadow step factor to 1, step factor to 1, and maybe shadow bias to 1 as well. Now the cloud is going to have a far higher level of quality. Another thing that you can also do is make sure that in here you issue blocking requests, which means that the cloud will always look the way you see it here rather than lose its definition. Now, one of the things that you're seeing right now when I'm sort of flying through like that, you're seeing these artifacts, and that's another thing that we need to fix. And the way to fix it is through the post-process volume, which is also a very important part of this. So when you select the post-process, I would like you to go into the Lumen, global illumination, have a look at all of these settings in here, ticking the boxes and so on, including the advanced options. And depending on your hardware, you're going to start cranking these numbers up. So for example, let's just put everything to the max, the sliders themselves, right? Now you are going to start taking a hit in performance as you do this, depending on the scene that you're using. Something like that, okay? Now, you'll notice that it's not happening as much. You see, like now it's not, the problem that we were having isn't happening as much. And at render time, it won't happen at all, which is quite nice. But you see, these sort of artifacting is a combination of the lumen quality itself and also the actual, like what I'm saying is like the volumetric fog, the sky atmosphere. So you are going to have to play around with these settings depending on your scene to make that work. These options in here where it says indirect lighting and so on, nothing happens on this end. Now, one of the things about the post-process, you've got to make sure in here that it's got an infinite extent ticked like it does here now, because if it doesn't, then you won't be able to see the effect of the post-process volume as you notice in here if I disable it or enable it, right? So it's important that you know that. Now some other things, obviously everything like sky atmosphere and everything else is affecting the cloud. So for example, with a low sky atmosphere, then the cloud looks different than what it does when it's a very high one. The height also affects it. So depending on what the height is, obviously the cloud will look different, a lot more alien. Multi-scattering and everything else as it contributes to the look and feel of the light. The exponential fog as well. So depending on what you're doing here, the cloud will start to inherit some of the properties of the volume. So you see there, without any fog density, that's how the cloud looks. This is how it looks when you get some fog density in there. So, think about, you could probably push this more, although I'm not sure that will make much of a difference. So there is a quite a bit of interplay between all of these systems together. Now the next thing also is in your directional light, where if you type in vol, just make sure you've got the cast volumetric shadow on, because if you don't, you get these very flat clouds. So you've got to make sure that that's also on. Again, if you play around with the volumetric cloud intensity, you're going to get a different look and feel of your cloud as well. That's how actually part of the thumbnail, that's how I've sort of done it, by playing around with this, because I was getting like a glowing effect on the cloud. So, with that volumetric intensity on, and then having a look at the bloom, for example, you could have a look at playing with that. See that? So what I've done there in that particular event, I've effectively created a scene in which the landscape was rendered one time and the clouds on top with this glow, so that the landscape itself doesn't glow as much as the cloud. So that was the idea. Right, okay, now let's delete this cloud and have a look at the multi-spawner. So if you go in here, again, into the Cloud4 spawner, and we select the BP spawner and drop it somewhere in the scene, like that, for example, we have the scale to set up. So we're going to untick this box and give it a scale of maybe 500, maybe a more, maybe 1,000 by 1,000, something like that, and then a height of 10, right? So you can see what that looks like. I'm just gonna drag it out here a little bit, maybe something like that. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to add some materials in here. So the first thing, and make sure they've got at least 3 materials loaded in. So we're gonna go into our VDB materials, we're gonna select the single cloud material, and I'm going to take this material instance and I'm going to drop it in there. And then I'm going to take this one, drop it in there. and then this one, and drop it in there. If you need more, you can just duplicate the material instances. Now I'm going to double click this. This got a common emblem, kind of, can't say it. That one, right? It's got that one. I'm gonna set this one actually in particular. Let me just put this up here, and then I'll open the second one, and then I'll open the third one. And then, I don't know, maybe just have a few more Cyruses, something like that. Now, what happens is, this cloud spawner will load these clouds, and it will give us with a density of 0.2. Going to be 25 clouds spawned, and they're going to move in a direction of 200. Maybe the scale needs to be bigger. You're going to have to play around with the settings depending on the scale of your scene. So this is a very large scene, so I'm not sure if that scale is going to be okay. How long in seconds will these clouds survive for? So that's 20 there, and that's about it really. Now we're going to also select indirect lighting and infinite trace, and now we're going to press play. So what happens is, when we press play, there will be clouds that will spawn in there. And right now I am not seeing any, so let's have a look. Okay, so in order for us to start seeing some clouds, let's just put the spawn rate to something like a 0.2, so they start spawning quite quickly. And then we can press play. And now you can see the first cloud over there, then the second one, the third one, and now multiple clouds are just going to spawn in this particular grid, you know, the spawn rate that we've created, and they're going to sort of move in our direction quite slowly. So what I'm also going to do now is I'm going to make this grid probably 5,000 by 5,000. Going to make that about 50, okay? And I'm going to put it somewhere around here, maybe something like that. Gonna make these clouds move maybe at a speed of 400. I'm gonna put spawning about 50. They're spawning every 0.2. Gonna put a density multiplier of 0.8. And their lifespan about 25. Yeah, okay, let's see if that's okay. Now also the scale is not big enough, so I'm gonna go for like 100 by 100 by 100 just for the sake of this. And we're gonna press play now. Now the clouds are gonna be a lot larger, as you can see. And they're spawning anywhere within that volume, and they're now moving across the scene. My particular sort of blueprint is not moving very fast, you know, like the one where I'm sort of navigating through the scene. But you can see how this creates that, you know, clouds that are now moving through the scene and traversing. If we make these clouds traverse a lot faster, so let's just say about 1,000 in that direction, and also for me to maybe spawn a bit closer to them. Okay, now I press play, and now you can see the clouds sort of moving. Again, even at that speed is still probably not that great, but you can see how all of these are being spawned and move around. Now, obviously you're noticing an FPS loss, and that will always sort of happen on this because you're spawning a lot of different clouds at the same time, sort of moving them into the scene, and then they do die off. So after a while of traversing, these clouds will die off, allowing for other clouds to spawn, and thus your performance will increase and decrease. This is not a solution for you to use in a game or anything like that if you're spawning too many clouds. This is more of a solution if you're trying to, you know, have some clouds rolling through a cinematic. And now you can see that the entire time has been elapsed and all the clouds are dead, so to speak. I know that sounds horrible, but don't worry, the clouds are fine. So that's kind of how you can use this, and I'm hoping that this will shed some more light on the CloudForge's functionality. And I do have another video where I showcase how to use the volumetric cloud component as well, which that's also a very intricate sort of thing. Now imagine if you're down here in this depression, this is a bit higher, and the clouds are even bigger, right? And we start, I don't know, again, let's just increase that speed, let's double that speed up. And now let's play. And you can see these clouds moving, okay? And now we are obviously down here and looking at them above. Now, depending on where the where the sun is, they can be a lot more detailed or a lot less. In the material, here, we can have a look at what does the cloud self shadow looks like. So let's just put that to a 5, because I think that will help with selling this particular thing. The density multiplier doesn't factor anything in here because it's driven by the blueprint. But now we have a thicker cloud, underbelly of the clouds themselves, which should, effectively give them an even more interesting look. And you can see how they're moving. And this is, as I said to you, this looks almost, photorealistic. Depending on how you put these together, this is where, I think this is where it really shines. This blueprint spawner sort of technique, it really, really shines here. I think it adds so much depth to the scene, and there's so much to work with from this. So that was it for this tutorial. If you'd like to support the Organians Puzzle Box YouTube effort, then please consider subscribing, liking, and commenting this video. If you'd like this project, have a look on my Unreal Engine Marketplace, ArtStation, Gumroad, or Patreon. Patreons get all the projects, regardless of what they are, and I think it's a, hopefully it's a great deal for you guys. But yeah, if you'd like to support the channel, as I've said, just take a look, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.